everybody's had a chance to review those, we will take a motion to approve or make modifications or decline.
I, Gary Israel, make a motion to approve the minutes from the October 15th, 2024 Planning Commission and Board of Zoning Appeals as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And motion carries. 4.1, potential residential development report. Staff?
We have no items to share for 4.1 or 4.2.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So we're going to jump into agenda item 5.1, Butler County rezoning 11291 Southwest Meadowlark Road. And staff can.
Thank you very much. So the subject property is in our extraterritorial jurisdiction. It's currently zoned Ag 40. The Butler County Planning Commission reached out to us to let us know that they would be hearing this case at their next meeting in December, and just asked for feedback from our Planning Commission. The applicant is looking to rezone it to a residential estate, so it can be split into two properties. This is in our extraterritorial planning jurisdiction, but it does not fall into any given place type in our comprehensive plan shown here. But staff has reviewed this as no opposition to the zoning amendment proposed. I'm here to take any questions or feedback.
Questions for staff?
No?
No. If not, we can look at a motion for this one. And this is just a recommendation, correct? Okay.
That's correct.
Well, I, Gary Israel, make a motion that we recommend the approval of the zoning request for 11291 Southwest Meadowlark Road, Andover, Kansas, to the Butler County Planning Commission.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
David Foley, second.
Thank you. Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And motion carries. We are going to go to 5.2 and get my script ready. We would like to welcome everyone and lay out a few ground rules which will apply to each public hearing held tonight. It is important that you present any facts or views as you have as evidence so that an informed recommendation can be made by the Planning Commission to the governing body for their final decision. By state statute, the governing body does not have to hold additional public hearings on these matters, although they may listen to whomever they wish. You will be asked if there is any new information which was not heard at these hearings. Advantage if you present all the necessary information at these hearings. For each case, after the city's zoning administrator provides the commission with background information, I will call upon each applicant. Public comments will be heard following the applicant. Once all have been heard, the applicant will have the opportunity for final comments. The Planning Commission will close the hearings to public comments and then consider 14 factors of which to base their recommendation. During this time, the commission may direct questions to the applicant, the public, and/or city staff. You should be aware that the Planning Commission can recommend that a site be platted or replatted if necessary, and a site plan may be required for approval. You should be aware that any uses permitted outright in a district by the regulations can receive a zoning permit. Furthermore, if the applicant chooses to describe various features of their development plans, the city can only enforce those provisions which are covered in zoning and other city codes. Anyone wishing to speak must be recognized by the chairperson and give their name and address. Please use the podium and speak clearly so your comments can be recorded for inclusion in our minutes. Official notice for all the hearings were published in the City of Andover municipal website on October 26 of 2024, and notices were mailed to the applicant and all real property owners of record in the areas of notification on October 25th, 2024. The record shows that at least 20 days have elapsed between the publication and mailing dates and the hearing date. Unless there's evidence to the contrary from anyone present, I will declare this proper notification has been given. Although we do not encourage such communications, I will ask the commission if any of them have received any ex parte verbal or written communications prior to these hearings they would like to share.
None.
All right, so then we're going to jump into 5.2 zoning amendment for 420 West Mike Street. I now call agenda 5.2, which is a public hearing on case number ZA24007. Before we proceed with the hearing, I'll ask commission members if any of them intend to disqualify themselves from participating in this case because they or relative own property in the area of notification or have conflicts of interest.
No.
None.
I now will call on City Zoning Administrator David Westfall to provide us a report on this case.
Thank you very much. This property is generally located at 420 West Mike Street. It's currently zoned SF2. The applicant, who is here with us tonight, is looking to amend the district classification to MF2, attached single-family residential district. Currently, this property is served by Andover Sewer and Water, as well as Evergy. It's at the edge of a neighborhood that is currently transitioning to denser housing. The use of the properties to the north and east already are attached single-family housing. So this zoning amendment would make the neighborhood more uniform and help match the character and condition of the adjacent properties. It would also be more consistent with the projected place type depicted in the Andover Comprehensive Plan.
Excellent. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this case? If you'll come to the podium, sir, and let us know your name and address.
Is this on? Okay. Yeah, my name is Cody. I'm the one that owns 420 West Mike. I was just told that I needed to be here, so I'm here. That's all I'd like to say. I don't know if I need to really say anything, but I'm going to try and mirror what's existing next to it as far as what I'm going to try and build. So that's all I got, I guess.
Has any written communications been received? Okay. And the applicant, do you have anything else you'd like to add, sir? That's okay. Okay. If there are no further public comments, I hereby close the public portion of the hearing. There will be no further public comments unless the commission wishes to ask questions to clarify information. The Planning Commission will now deliberate the request. There are 14 factors in which the commission must consider in order to make the findings ultimately a recommendation. And if somebody would like to read those, I will greatly.
Well, I do have a question for the applicant. If you don't mind coming up to the podium. And I'm the one who tabled this last month, and my concern is I have no idea what you plan on doing with multifamily. Are you trying to keep it looking like what the rest of the neighborhood's
I'm
doing?
going to make it look exactly like the ones next door, basically. So it's going to, there was like a derelict house that sat there for, I don't know how many years, but that's been, the lot's completely bulldozed now. I had a demolition permit and that permit's been cleared and completed. So the lot's completely bare right now. And what I plan on building is just, it's going to be extremely aesthetic to the area. It's going to look just like what's next door. There's like some triplexes, duplexes, I think to the right there, to the east. And I'm basically going to continue that down. I've already kind of looked at it with the distances from the borders and everything like that. So nothing funky, just normal, just exactly to the T, exactly. Yeah. If you zoom in, that lot right there to the right, I'm just going to mirror that onto that lot basically.
Okay.
So it's going to look exactly like the ones to the east. I'm down to the same siding. I mean, it's going to look very, very similar.
So you're going to do a duplex, a triplex?
I plan on doing a triplex on the back, and then if you notice, it's kind of close to the Mike Street. There's like a triplex there. I plan on doing 2 triplexes, basically. So that's what's on in that whole neighborhood. There's like a 4-plex and triplexes. Then there's,
Okay.
basically that. Nothing weird or no big apartment complexes or anything funky like that. Just what's exactly next door to make it all match and be aesthetic. And the area is kind of it's kind of a blighted area, but I think it's gonna, this will make it look a lot nicer. So.
Well, I appreciate you continuing that aesthetic.
Yeah, I
to
like
that
Andover a
neighborhood.
lot.
So it's
I like
not
it.
something that's just going to be glaring out.
Yeah,
there.
you know, you won't be able to see it from the highway or anything like that. It'll just be some,
Yeah. Well, I've driven back there and it's a nice little area.
yeah, it's quiet. I trimmed all those duplexes behind it. I did all the trim carpeting on those last year.
Okay. Well, thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, thanks.
Somebody like to read?
I can do it.
Thank you.
Staff items. Do adequate sewage disposal and water supply and all other necessary public facilities, including street access, exist or can they be provided to serve the uses that would be permitted on the subject property if the change in zoning were approved? Staff. Public facilities are in place and adequate or could be readily extended to serve the property. Number two, if the zoning change request was approved, would the subject property need to be platted or replatted or have in lieu of dedications made in order to provide needed rights of way, easements, building setback lines, or access control? Staff, the subject property would need to be platted during the planned unit development process. Number three, if the zoning change request was approved, would the subject property need a screening plan for existing potential uses? Staff, no, the zoning districts of adjacent properties in relation to the proposed zoning would not require a screening buffer between the two per the Andover UDM. Number four, what fact-based information in support or in opposition to the requested zoning change has staff received? Staff, none at this time. Number five, if there has been an error in the application of these zoning regulations to the subject property, would the requested zoning change correct the error? Staff says no error is known to exist. Number six, how suitable or unsuitable is the subject property for its current zoning? Staff, the property is suitable for its current zoning.
Concur.
Sorry, concur. Is the length of time the subject property has been vacant or undeveloped under its current zoning factor in the zoning change request? Staff, no. Concur. Number eight, how reasonable, well-suited will the requested zoning change of the subject property be with the current zoning of nearby properties? Staff, the requested change would be suitable to the current zoning of nearby properties in that it would more consistently match the adjacent attached single-family homes. Concur. Number nine, has the zoning change been requested because conditions in the area of the subject property have changed or are changing? If so, what is the nature and significance of these conditions? Staff, the surrounding area has been transitioning to more dense housing as a means of revitalization for the neighborhood. The requested zoning change would continue this trend. Concur. Number 10, what are the current land uses, character and condition of the subject property and the surrounding neighborhood? Staff, the current land uses in the area are in a state of transitioning to denser housing options. The subject property is at the edge of this zone, and the proposed zoning change would make the property more consistent with the character and condition of the surrounding neighborhood. Concur. Number 11, would the proposed zoning change of the subject property allow land uses which might have detrimental effects on nearby properties, and if so, how? Staff, the proposed use will increase the traffic, lighting, activity, etc. over the current single-family home, but can be mitigated during the later stages of development.
Concur.
How would the requested zoning change conform with the city's comprehensive plan and other adopted master plans and policies? Staff states the comprehensive plan suggests a mixed residential neighborhood place type for this neighborhood, more housing options in this area other than single family and other lower density housing would conform well with Andover's comprehensive plan.
Concur.
13, do any professional persons knowledgeable on conditions that affect this zoning change request have information or recommendations to provide which would be helpful in its evaluation? Staff says. Staff supports the proposed zoning change.
Concur.
Number 14, How would the potential loss in value or hardship imposed on the applicant compare to the relative gain to the public health, safety, and welfare if there is a change from the current zone to the requested zone? Staff states no detriment to the public health, safety, and welfare is perceived. Any changes in light, traffic, or noise can be sufficiently mitigated with the adequate screening and buffering.
Concur.
Concur.
Having discussed and reached the conclusions of our findings of fact, I would remind the commission that a proper motion should reflect factors of which it's based, and if approval is recommended, then consideration should be given to any conditions that might be attached. Is there a motion to either recommend approval, modification and approval, or disapproval, or table the discussion?
Madam Chairperson, I, Gary Israel, having considered the evidence at the hearing and the factors to evaluate the application, I move that we recommend to the governing body that case number Z-A24-0007 be approved based on the findings of the Planning Commission on findings 6, 8, 10, and 12, as recorded in the summary of this hearing.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Dan Carlson, second.
Thank you, Dan. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? And the motion carries. Don't we usually have like a little summary at the end? Do I? Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. Things are different tonight. I apologize. So we're going to jump into 5.3. I now,
Before we go
Yeah.
on further, I'd like to thank the applicant for coming in this evening and to be here with us and to address my issue of what it's going to look like in that area. And I appreciate the fact that you're going to continue that aesthetic in the neighborhood.
so I now call agenda item 5.3, which is a public hearing on case number ZA24-008. Before we proceed with the hearing, I'll ask the commission members if any of them intend to disqualify themselves from participating in this case because they or a relative own property in the area of notification or have conflicts of interest.
No.
I now call the zoning administrator, Dave Westfall, to provide us with a report on this case.
Thank you very much. So the subject property here is on 126 East Lafayette Street, just south of the Andover Middle School and the Redbud Trail. It's currently zoned SF2, single-family, medium density district. The applicant wishes to amend the zoning district in order to develop the site for commercial uses. Some factors to consider here for more context. Because of its proximity to the school, it is important to note that the sale of alcoholic beverages would not be allowed within 100 feet of that school. And additionally, the property has previously been used for commercial purposes before it was zoned SF1 when it was a plumbing supply store. The proposed zoning change would be consistent with what we are projecting as the trail oriented corridor place type in our comprehensive plan. Evergy and Andover Water and Sewer currently serve the property, and I'd be happy to take any other questions you have.
Okay. Any questions for David right now? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to ask the applicant to come make his or her presentation on request and any response to the zoning administrator's report.
Good evening. My name is Ben Thomas. I'm representing the property at 126 Lafayette. My address is 12621 Southwest 80th Street, Andover, Kansas. I don't have much to add. I don't have a grand plan just yet. I know that the purchase of this property and the desire for us to keep it is to extend our 0.9 restaurant trailside and kind of have an opportunity to either do some light retail, some rentals, some bike rental. But it is difficult to give you a complete picture at this point because we do not have one. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Until you change it over to a commercial property, is the existing structure going to stay? Or,
We are gonna, we've had a general contractor look at the building and we are going to try and save that building.
okay,
I don't know if that makes you happy or not, but when we're done with it, you will be happy with what we've done.
so would your main entrance be off the trail or off Lafayette?
Lafayette.
Okay.
If I were to rent a bicycle, could I leave from the back of the property to get to the trail?
Absolutely.
So that would require some improvements to the back of that to get up to the trail then.
Yes, and I think that in the grand scheme of things, when we do decide to go in that direction, there will have to be a complete landscaping and site change. So we're fully aware of what we're getting ourselves into, even though we're still doing it.
Sure. And for staff, would they have to go to site plan for that then?
Yes.
Okay.
Any additional questions for Mr. Thomas? Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this case?
Hello.
Hi.
I'm hard of hearing, so I missed a little bit of it. So help me out here a little bit if I don't hear what you have to say back. But
Could you give us your name and address?
my name is
before you-
Don Clark,
Thank you.
and I live in Bel Air, 6730 Summerside Place in Bel Air. And I own a property at 1521 Harmon over there, right in that, across the street from
Okay.
where the gentleman was talking about. And obviously, I'm very concerned about having a business right across the street from the house. I'll ask you a question. I know that was a little business at one time. Was that zoned for commercial at that time when that little business was in there years ago?
As far as I know, the property has always been a legal nonconformance in the single-family residential district. It was an operating business when zoning was adopted in Andover in the 1970s.
I missed that.
The business is a legal nonconforming use. It existed prior to zoning in Andover.
Thank you. So what the gentleman's asking for is to rezone this area to where businesses can be built in the area. So we're in the middle of a housing area here. And if this opens up to a commercial area, well, what about the people living there in their houses? We gotta live next door to a business of people pulling in, parking. Well, I mean, this lowers the value of our property. If I try to sell that property and I've got a business right across the street, it's gonna hurt the value of my property. Now, I respect the gentleman for wanting to have a business. I've had businesses. I have a business now. And I understand what you get open a business. The thing is, he purchased that property before he knew that he could get any zoning there. And now he's purchased the property and wants to come in and change the zoning. When I bought the property, it was a dirt road. And the city come in and wanted to pave. And so I went along with the paving because it improved the neighborhood, but it adds spatials to my property. So I'm paying spatials on a property that was built in the early 60s, which is hard enough to sell that property if I ever wanted to sell it, just because a lot of people wouldn't even want to pay specials on a house that's that old. But it did improve the neighborhood. But now here we got this situation where not only did I'm paying specials, but now there's a possibility if this was to happen, that could lower the value of my property with a business right next door. So I'm very opposed to it.
Thank you for your comment, sir. Can you give us more idea of what type of business can fall under this type of zoning change?
I'll pull up a list of that now.
Thank you. You mentioned no alcohol because of a proximity to school and
Correct. Yeah, that would not be an authorized use.
well, he's pulling that up. Can you tell us, so I noticed on one of the slides you have a trail-oriented corridor and this property falls into that. So can you tell us a little bit about what the idea was for that corridor or what, what the plan is there, how that was marked that way?
The intent of that trail-oriented corridor was to allow residential and lighter commercial uses to intermingle, with the commercial uses being somewhat to serve those trail users. Like the applicant mentioned, a bicycle store, a bicycle repair shop, or food, or, just those things that a person would consider if they were out for a recreation ride or a walk on the trail.
Okay.
So I have that pulled up here just to give you some idea of what the intent for this zoning district would be. It's intended to create a vibrant, compact, walkable, mixed-use urban environment. So what that would mean for permitted uses are any of those permitted that uses permitted in the B2. In addition, it does allow potentially for single-family detached, two-family dwellings, group homes, apartment buildings, condominiums, and townhouses. On the size of that lot, I don't anticipate that being something that a developer could necessarily achieve. Banks, other financial institutions, bed and breakfast homes, businesses, professional offices, drinking establishments in cases where it's not within 100 feet of a school, hotel, indoor recreation centers, including bowling alleys. Yeah, 200, okay. Public parks and playgrounds, and restaurants with patio seating as an accessory use, but not in the public right of way. There's the list of permitted uses.
Okay. Thank you. I guess I should ask, are there any additional members of the public that would like to speak on this? Do you have questions for anybody yet?
Well, for staff, if this goes to site plan, because it's going to become a business, they're going to require X number of parking spaces, correct?
Yes, that'll be dependent upon what type of business it is, whether it's retail, restaurant. Each of those has different requirements based on that use for the number of parking spaces.
Okay. So if they cannot meet parking space requirements because of the size of the lot or anything along that line, then unfortunately they wouldn't be able to put the business in. Is that correct?
Correct. We would not issue a certificate of occupancy unless they can meet those requirements.
Okay.
There are also a lot of mitigating factors that would be incorporated into site plan for buffering, screening, and addressing some of the concerns for this developing in or next to a neighborhood.
And again, city council, this will go to city council and they could just say, meh, no, correct? Okay, so we're just looking at the zoning this evening.
Correct.
Okay. I have one more question for Ben. And sorry, I was writing things down when you were talking. Is the existing home vacant right now or?
Calling it a home would be
Yeah, that's a
a stretch.
Okay, so.
It is literally a cinder block building with a falling in roof.
Okay.
And anything that I do to that building is going to increase the value of that property. Anything I do. So, I mean, I can certainly understand his objection, and I probably would feel a similar feeling, but as far as I'm standing here in front of you today, I know that what we're going to put in there is going to make the area a better place for the community and an opportunity for people to ultimately destinate to this area of our great city. So I'm looking forward to getting going.
Have you talked to the individual who resides at 120? That home right there in front?
I have knocked on the door, but I have not received a call back.
Okay.
Have there been any written communications received? Okay. Because you're already at the podium, does the applicant wish to present any final comments?
No.
How many structures are on that property?
2.
2. And you would keep both those, but the main one would be in the back?
Yeah, the metal building that's there currently is a great space for any kind of storage or things of that nature. We're not planning on storage, so that's a word that I'm not greatly using, but it provides some value for that property. The front building is really just an expense to repair.
Mhm.
And as to what we are going to do with it is not, like I said, determined just yet, but to get started with that process is kind of where we are here tonight.
So the majority of the activity would go up, would be out of the building to the north there, closest to the trail. Is that the way I see it?
That is our feeling at this point. Absolutely.
All right. Any additional questions before we move on? So hearing no further public comments, I hereby close the public portion of this hearing. There will be no further public comments unless the commission wishes to ask questions to clarify information. The Planning Commission will now deliberate the request. There are 14 factors which the commission must consider in order to make findings, ultimately a recommendation.
Would you like me to read?
Please, thank you. Or
No, if you
go-
want to, I'm going to croak through
I
it.
think we'll both get our.
I was going to say, well, I'll get a turn tonight, so.
Go ahead.
Staff items. Number 1, do adequate sewage disposal and water supply and all other necessary public facilities, including street access, exist, or can they be provided to serve the uses that would be permitted on the subject property if the change in zoning were approved? Staff, public facilities are in place and adequate or could be readily extended to serve the property. Number 2, if the zoning request was approved, would the subject property need to be platted or replatted or have in lieu of dedications made in order to provide needed rights of way, easements, building setback lines, or access control? Staff, no. 3, if the zoning change request was approved, would the subject property need a screening plan for existing or potential uses? Staff, yes. A screening fence or a wall would be required as specified in the UDM. Number 4, what fact-based information in support of or in opposition to the requested zoning change has staff received? Staff, none at this time. Number 5, if there has been an error in the application of these zoning regulations to the subject property, would the requested zoning change correct the error? Staff, the storefront commercial building is a legal non-conforming use in the SF2 district. The building use predated zoning.
Concur.
No. I don't
No,
think we're
are we
yet.
there yet?
No, I just was
Sorry.
scrolling. Sorry.
Okay, no.
My bad. Number 6,
thought
how
we were there.
suitable or unsuitable is the subject property for its current zoning? Staff, the storefront commercial building is a legal non-conforming use in the SF2 district. The building used predated zoning.
Concur.
Concur.
Yes,
Concur.
concur.
Number 7, is the length of time the subject property has been vacant or undeveloped under its current zoning a factor in the zoning change request? Staff, no. Concur.
Concur.
Number 8, how reasonably well suited will the requested zoning change of the subject property be with the current zoning of nearby properties? Staff, the requested change would be suitable to the current zoning of nearby properties. The requested change would provide a number of services while accomplishing the comprehensive plan's goal of a walkable, vibrant place for the city.
Concur.
Concur.
Number 9, has the zoning change been requested because condition in the areas of the subject property have changed or are changing? If so, what is the nature and significance of these conditions? Staff, the surrounding area has been transitioning to accommodate services for the trail-oriented corridor place type. Concur.
Concur.
Number 10, what are the current land uses, character, and condition of the subject property and the surrounding neighborhood? Staff, the current land uses in the area are a mixture of low-density single-family housing and some multifamily attached homes. Concur.
Concur.
Number 11, would the proposed zoning change of the subject property allow land uses which might have detrimental effects on nearby properties, and if so, how? Staff, the proposed use could increase the traffic, lighting, activity, etc. over the current single-family home if it were used for commercial purposes, but can be mitigated during later stages of development.
Concur.
Concur with staff.
Concur.
Number 12, how would the requested zoning change conform with the city's comprehensive plan and other adopted master plans and policies? Staff, the comprehensive plan suggests a trail-oriented corridor place type for this neighborhood. Proposed use would directly support the city's comprehensive plan.
Concur.
Concur.
13, do any professional persons knowledgeable on conditions that affect this zoning change request have information or recommendations to provide which would be helpful in its evaluation? Staff supports the proposed zoning change. Concur.
Concur.
Number 14, how would the potential loss in value or hardship imposed on the applicant compare to the relative gain to the public health, safety, and welfare if there is a change from the current zone to the requested zone? Staff, no detriment to public health, safety, and welfare is perceived. Any changes in light, traffic, or noise can be sufficiently mitigated with adequate screening and buffering.
Concur.
Concur.
Having discussed and reached conclusions of our finding of fact, I would remind the commission that a proper motion should reflect the factors in which it's based, and if approval is recommended, then consideration should be given to any conditions that might be attached. Is there a motion to either recommend approval, modification, and approval, or disapproval, or table the discussion?
Madam Chairperson, having considered the evidence at the hearing and the factors to evaluate the application, I, Gary Israel, move that we recommend to the governing body that case number Z-A24-0008 be approved based on the findings of the Planning Commission on findings 6, and that is because it's a legal non-conforming property at present. Number 8, 9, and 12, as recorded in the summary of this hearing.
Thank you, Gary. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
David Foley, second.
Thank you, David. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Let me get where I'm supposed to be. We now have agenda item 5.4, which is a public hearing on case number Z, VA24-003, the vacation of Cornerstone 5th edition. I'm sorry, I forgot I continued to read. Before we proceed with this hearing, I'll ask the commission members if them or any of them intend to disqualify themselves from participating in this case because they are a relative of property in the area of notification or have conflicts of interest.
None.
None.
I call upon the city's zoning administrator, David, to provide us with a report on this case.
Thank you very much. The applicant here is wishing to vacate a portion of the drainage easement along the 3 lots of Block A, Cornerstone 5th Edition, in order to accommodate larger houses on the lots. To the west of this easement is a berm that runs along the western edge of the subject property. And after reviewing the case, staff still has some serious concerns that the property's ability to sufficiently drain, if this vacation would be granted, is permitted to make improvements on the current drainage easement, with that it would not drain properly. So without any further information from the applicant, our recommendation would be to deny this petition for vacation.
Okay. I now call upon the applicant to make his or her presentation on request and any response to the zoning administrator's report. They are not here. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this case? Are there any written communications that have been received? And no applicant. So hearing no further public comments, I hereby close the public portion of the hearing. There will be no further public comment unless the commission wishes to ask questions or clarify information. The Planning Commission will now deliberate the request. There are 14 factors in which the commission must consider in order to make findings, ultimately a recommendation.
I'm not finding those 14 facts in my piece of literature. I see 1 through 7.
Yeah, there's 1 through 7.
Correct.
Okay, so there's only the 7.
7.
Okay.
I got it. Our staff items, number 1, are public improvements or utilities located within the area considered for vacation? Staff, the existing easement has been graded to drain the rear of the lots. Number 2, if the vacation request was approved, would in lieu of dedications need to be made in order to provide rights of way, easements, building setback lines, or access control? Staff states no dedications are necessary. Number 3, if the variance request was approved, would provisions for relocation of public improvements or utilities need to be made? Staff states the proposed vacation would eliminate the aforementioned grading improvements, limiting the site drainage without a plan for relocation mitigation. Number 4, if there has been an error, would the requested vacation correct the error? Staff states no error is known to exist. Number 5, has due and legal notice been given? Staff states yes. Number 6, will private rights be injured or endangered? Staff states without a drainage study to indicate how the vacation of the drainage easements would affect the overall drainage plan, staff believes that private rights or property could be in danger. Concur. Number 7, will the public suffer loss or inconvenience? Staff states the lack of a clear picture of how the property will drain with this vacation could lead to loss or inconvenience. And we concur.
So having discussed and reached conclusions on our findings of fact, I would remind the commission that a proper motion should reflect the factors in which it's based. If approval is recommended, then consideration should be given to any conditions that might be attached. Is there a motion to either recommend approval, modifications and approval, or disapproval, or to table the discussion?
Question for staff. If we were to disapprove this item, the applicant still has the opportunity to bring it back before us again if they meet requirements of drainage. correct?
Yes.
Based on it,
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and make a motion, having considered the evidence at the hearing and the factors to evaluate the application. I, Gary Israel, move that we recommend to the governing body that case number Z-VA 24-0003 be disapproved on the findings of the Planning Commission based on findings 6 and 7 recorded in the summary of this hearing. And also would like to make note that we need a drainage plan for any modifications to that the applicant's requesting.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Dan Colson, second.
Thank you, Dan. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries. These cases will be forwarded to the governor body with the planning commission's recommendation and written summary of hearing for consideration at their regular meeting on December 10th, 2024. The recording of the hearing will be retained at least 60 days after the final determination is complete on this case. Protest petitions against these cases must, but not directed at the commission's recommendation as such, may be received by the city clerk for 14 days after tonight, December 3rd, 2024 at 4:30 p.m. If there are properly signed protest petitions with accurate legal descriptions from the owners of record of 20% or more of the total real property owners within the official areas of notification, both inside and outside of the city, and not counting public street right-of-ways or specific statutorily excluded property, then such a change shall not be passed except for a 3/4 vote of all members of the city council.
Madam Chairperson, I make a motion to recess the planning commission and convene the Board of Zoning Appeals.
We have a motion to recess planning and convene boards of zoning and appeals. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion will carry. So we're going to get into agenda item 5.1, which is a public hearing on case number BZA V24-004. Before we proceed with this hearing, I'll ask the commission members if any of them intend to disqualify themselves from participating in this case because they or relative own property in the area of notification or have conflicts of interest.
No.
None.
Thank you. I now call upon the city's zoning administrator, David, to provide us with a report on this case.
Thank you very much. Subject property here is located at 1117 East Bluestem Court, currently zoned SF1, single family low density district. The applicant here is seeking a variance of 516 feet from the 500 square foot maximum floor area of an accessory structure, as well as 944 square feet from the 1,000 square feet total maximum size of all accessory structures permitted in the UDM for the purpose of constructing an approximately 995 square foot accessory structure on the property. The subject property here is 1.6 acres located in a neighborhood where accessory structures and buildings are pretty commonplace. Staff has reviewed the case and sees no reason not to grant the variance pending the outcome of the public hearing.
Thank you. I now call upon the applicant to make his or her presentation to the request and any response to the zoning administrator's report.
Name is Jamie Iverson. I live at 1117 East Bluestem Court. It's basically just a pool house that I'm building. There's multiple ones that same size in the neighborhood. I know the HOA planning committee for Flint Hills is fine with the build. They've already approved it from their standpoint. Obviously, I just had to get the variance from you guys. And I've talked with at least the 3 property owners closest to me, 1 to the west and 2 to the south that would have the best view of it. All of them are completely fine with it.
Any questions?
I gather you have an HOA that you have to report to, correct?
Correct. Yeah, they have their own HOA. They have a committee for what it has to look like. It has to match my current house, its sides, or if everything has to match perfectly. And they've already approved the design of it. And
That would be Tom Devlin.
yeah.
Are there any members of the public that wish to speak on this case? Have any written communications been received? All right. Sir, do you have any final comments you'd like to make?
No, thank you.
Okay. Hearing no further public comments, I hereby close the public portion of this hearing. There will be no further public comments unless the board wishes to ask questions to clarify information. The board will now deliberate the request to determine whether the evidence presented supports the conclusions of required fact finding, and the board will now consider the criteria provided for evaluation.
Guess it's my turn to
Please.
read. Does the evidence demonstrate that, one, the physical surrounding shape or topography of the property would result in a practical difficulty as distinguished from a mere inconvenience for the owner, leasee, or occupant? Staff comments, the property is over 3 times the minimum lot area required for the underlying zoning district. As well, it is an unusual shape and would result in an underutilized amount of the property to be utilized, and would concur with that.
Concur.
Yes.
Number 2, granting the variance will result in material detriment or injury to other property or improvements in the neighborhood. Staff, no detriment and or injury to the property or improvements is anticipated.
Concur.
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 Number 3, granting the variance will result in an inadequate supply of light or air to adjacent property, substantially increase traffic congestion, increase fire risk, or substantially diminish property values in the neighborhood. Staff, no adverse effects are anticipated.
Concur.
And I would say that my comment would be that it makes it more like a lot of the other properties in the neighborhood with pull houses and things. Number 4, the request for a variance is not based exclusively on a desire of the owner, leasee, occupant, or applicant to make more money out of the property. Staff, the applicant does not have a motivation to make money out of the property through the request of this variance. It is to allow structure to be used as a pull house. Concur.
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 Specific conditions to be met. Number 1, the requested variance arises from a condition unique to the property in question, which is not ordinarily found in the same zoning district and which was not created by an action of the property owner or the applicant. Staff, the subject property is generally larger than other compatible SF-1 housing sites. Comparing it to a smaller lot that might comply with the 500 square foot maximum for accessory structures, it would have a comparable impact on the maximum lot coverage as what is being requested. Would concur.
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 Number 2, strict application of the provisions of this zoning regulation would result in unnecessary hardship for the owner, leasee, or occupant of the land or structures. Staff, strict application of the provisions in this case would result in some unnecessary hardship for the owner given that the size of the lot and what is being requested.
Concur.
Concur. Number 3, granting the variance will not adversely affect the rights of adjacent property owners or residents. Staff, no adverse effects are anticipated. Concur.
Concur.
Number 4, the requested variance will not adversely affect the public health, safety, morals, order, convenience, prosperity, or general welfare. Staff, no adverse effects are anticipated.
Concur.
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 The requested variance will not be opposed to the general spirit and intent of these zoning regulations. Staff, because the requested variance would still allow the subject property to comply with the maximum lot coverage specified for this zoning district in the bulk regulations, it is not in opposition to the general spirit and intent of the zoning regulations.
Concur.
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 Is there a motion to either approve, modify, and approve, or disapprove, or table the discussion?
Having Madam Chairperson, having considered the evidence of the hearing and determined that the findings of fact have been found to exist that support all 5 conditions set out in subsection 11-106.b2 of the zoning regulations and KSA 12-759E, I, Dan Colson, move that the chairperson be authorized to sign a resolution granting the variance for case number BZA-4-V24-0004 as requested.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
David Foley, second.
Thank you. Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries. A resolution will be prepared and made available to the applicant as soon as reasonably possible, but no later than 45 days from the date of this hearing. If anyone is aggrieved by the decision, a further appeal can be made to the district court to determine its reasonableness within 30 days after the resolution is signed and filed with the zoning administrator. Thank you. We are going to go to 5.6, a variance at 201 East Cedar Ridge Court. So I now call agenda item 5.6, which is a public hearing on case number BZA V240005. Before we proceed with this hearing, I'll ask the commission members if any of them intend to disqualify themselves from participating in this case because they are a relative owned property in the area of notification or have conflicts of interest.
No.
I now call upon the city's zoning administrator, David Westfall, to provide us with a report on this case.
Thank you very much. So this is a fairly similar case. In fact, it's in the same neighborhood as the previous case, where the applicant is seeking a variance to build an accessory structure here. So in this case, the variance would be for 325 square feet from the 500 square foot maximum floor area of an accessory structure. And it would be for the purpose of building an approximately 825-foot accessory structure on the property. It's again located on a larger lot, 1.6 acres in this case, in a neighborhood where, as we mentioned before, accessory structures and buildings are commonplace. We again see no reason to not grant this request.
All right, thank you. I now call upon the applicant to make his or her presentation on the request and any response to the zoning administrator's report. Are there any members?
Ms. Chairperson, I
Oh.
spoke with the applicant earlier. They did intend to show up, but they had a scheduling conflict, just so you guys know.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this case? Any written communications? And the applicant is not here for final comment. So hearing no further public comments, I hereby close the public portion of this hearing. There will be no further public comments unless the board wishes to ask questions or clarify information. The board will now deliberate the request to determine whether the evidence presented supports the conclusions of finding of fact, and the board will now consider a criteria provided for evaluation.
I do have one question. I wish the applicant was here. I see an overhead door on the structure. Is that for lawn equipment or is that for vehicles to enter into the structure?
I think they just specified it would be used as a shed. They did not share what specifically it would be for.
Because I was just wondering how they were going to access it. Are they going to put in a driveway, if it were to park vehicles, or if it's just a shed and they're going to drive it in tractors, don't need a driveway.
In my communication with the applicant, it's really just a shed for storing like garden tools and stuff.
Okay,
Nothing too serious.
that's what I figured.
I'll take it.
Thank you.
Facts of finding, does the evidence demonstrate that, number one, the physical surroundings, shape, or topography of the property will result in practical difficulty as distinguished from a mere inconvenience for the owner, lessee, or occupant? Staff states the property is over 3 times the minimum lot area required for the underlying zoning district. As well, it is unusual shape and would result in underutilized amount of the property to be utilized.
Concur.
Number 2, granting the variance will result in material detriment or injury to other people or improvements in the neighborhood. Staff states no detriment and/or injury to the other property or improvements is anticipated.
Concur.
Number 3, granting the variance will result in an inadequate supply of light or air to adjacent properties, substantially increase traffic congestion, increased fire risk, or substantially diminish property values in the neighborhood. Staff states no adverse effects are anticipated.
Concur.
And number 4, the request for variance is not based exclusively on a desire of the owner, lessee, occupant, or applicant to make more money out of the property. Staff states the applicant does not have a motivation to make money out of the property through the request of this variance. It is to allow a structure to be used as a shed.
Concur.
Specific conditions to be met. Number 1, the requested variance arises from a condition unique to the property in question, which is not ordinarily found in the same zoning district, and which was not created by any action of the property owner or the applicant. Staff states the subject property is generally larger than the other comparable SF1 housing sites. Comparing it to smaller lot that might comply with the 500 square foot maximum for accessory structure, it would have a comparable impact on the maximum lot coverage as what is being requested.
Concur.
Number 2, strict application of the provisions of these zoning regulations would result in unnecessary hardship for the owner, lessee, or occupant of the land or structures. Staff states strict application of the provisions in this case would result in some unnecessary hardship for the owner given the size of the lot and what is being requested.
Concur.
Number 3, granting the variance will not adversely affect the rights of adjacent property owners or residents. Staff states no adverse effects are anticipated. Number 4, the requested variance,
Concur.
Number 4, the requested variance will not adversely affect the public health, safety, morals, order, convenience, prosperity, or general welfare. Staff states no adverse effects are anticipated.
Concur.
Concur.
Number 5, the requested variance will not be opposed to the general spirit and intent of these zoning regulations. Staff states because the requested variance would still allow the subject property to comply with the maximum lot coverage specified for this zoning district in the bulk regulations, it is not in opposition to the general spirit and intent of the zoning regulations.
Concur.
Concur.
Is there a motion to either approve, modify, and approve, or disapprove, or table the discussion?
Madam Chairperson, having considered the evidence at the hearing and determining that the findings of fact have been found to exist that support all 5 conditions set out in subsection 11-106 .b2 of the zoning regulations and KSA 12-759E, I, Gary Israel, move that the chairperson be authorized to sign a resolution granting the variance for case number BZA-V24-0005 as requested.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Dan Carlson, second.
Thank you. Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries. A resolution will be prepared and made available to the applicant as soon as reasonably possible, but no later than 45 days from the date of this hearing. If anyone is aggrieved by this decision, a further appeal can be made to the district court to determine its reasonableness within 30 days after resolution is signed and filed with the zoning administrator. To use the word aggrieved and reasonableness all in the same paragraph is not very nice.
I have to challenge you.
So we're going to jump into 5.7, which is the conditional use of 804 West Harry Street. I now call agenda item 5.7, which is a public hearing on case number BZA-CU240001. Before we proceed with this hearing, I'll ask the commission members if any of them intend to disqualify themselves from participating in this case because they or a relative own property in the area of notification or have conflicts of interest.
None.
I now call upon the city zoning administrator to provide us with a report on this case.
Thank you very much. As mentioned here, this is generally located at 804 West Harry Street. It's currently zoned SF2. It's an approximately 2-acre plot. The applicant simply here is just submitting a conditional use request for accessory dwelling unit on their property as is authorized in the UDM. Staff has reviewed the application and has no opposition.
Thank you. Is the applicant here to make his or her presentation on request in response to the zoning administrator's report? Thank you, sir. And of course, you had to wait through everybody.
It's always good to be last, right? My name is Mike Gear, and my wife Jeannie and I are here with our son, who is currently living with us and would be living in this new apartment that we're going to be building in the barn. It currently was a horse stable, and we have this great structure that we're wanting to renovate and reuse and turn it into an apartment for him and his two sons.
Are there any members of the public do we have any questions? I'm sorry, for the applicant? Go ahead.
Not modifying the structure externally at all?
Externally, we're not touching it at all. We painted it. It looks a lot better.
Okay.
No, all of the improvements will be done inside.
Thank you.
Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this case? Have there been any written communications received? Sir, do you have any final comments? Thank you. Hearing no further public comments, I hereby close the public portion of the hearing. There will be no further public comments unless the board wishes to ask or clarify information. The board will now deliberate the request to determine whether the evidence presented supports the conclusions of required finding of fact, and the board will now consider the criteria provided for evaluation.
I got it.
Thank you, Dave.
Number one, does the evidence support the conclusion that number one, the proposed conditional use complies with all applicable regulations, including lot size requirements, bulk regulations, use limitations, and performance standards, unless a concurrent application is in process for a variance? Staff states yes.
Concur.
Number two, the proposed conditional use will not cause substantial injury to the value of the property in the neighborhood. Staff states, staff anticipates no such negative effects.
Concur.
Number three, the location and size of the conditional use, the nature and intensity of the operation involved in or conducted in connection with it, and the location of the site with respect to streets giving access to it are such that the conditional use will not dominate the immediate neighborhood so as to prevent development and use of neighboring property in accordance with the applicable zoning district regulations. In determining whether the condition use will so dominate the immediate neighborhood, consideration shall be given to A, the location, nature, size, and height of the building, structures, walls, and fences on the site, and B, the nature and extent of landscaping and screening on the site. Staff states no, this action would simply be allowing for the use of an existing structure as an accessory dwelling unit.
Concur.
Concur. Number four, off-street parking and loading areas will be provided in accordance with the standards set forth in Article 5 of these regulations. Such areas will be screened from adjoining residential uses and located so as to protect such residential uses from injurious effects. Staff states yes.
Concur.
Concur. I want to see it.
Provide, what happened here?
It's right above the
Yeah.
bottom.
I got you. Adequate utility drainage and other such necessary facilities have been installed or will be provided by plating dedications and or guarantees. Staff states yes, all are currently in place.
Concur.
Concur. Number six, adequate access roads, entrance and exit drives and or access control is available or will be provided by plating dedications and or guarantees and shall be so designed to prevent traffic hazards and to minimize traffic congestion in public streets and roads. Staff states yes.
Concur.
Concur.
Is there a motion to either approve, modify and approve, disapprove, or to table the discussion?
Having considered the evidence of the hearings and determined that the findings of fact have been found to exist that support all five conditions set out in subsection 11-107C of the zoning regulations, I, Dan Colson, move that the chairperson be authorized to sign a resolution granting the conditional use for case number BZA CU 24-0001 as requested.
I have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank
Gary
you.
Israel.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries. A resolution will be prepared and made available to the applicant as soon as reasonably possible, but no later than 45 days from the date of this hearing. If anyone is aggrieved by this decision, a further appeal can be made to the district court to determine its reasonableness within 30 days after resolution is signed and filed with the zoning administrator. Thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you and good luck.
Thank you.
We have the conditional use for the Train Enterprise Edition. I now call agenda item 5.8, which is a public hearing on case number BZA CU240002. Before we proceed with the hearing, I'll ask the commission members if any of them intend to disqualify themselves from participating in this case because they or a relative own property in the area of notification or have conflicts of interest.
No.
No.
I now call on the city zoning administrator to provide us with a report on this case.
Thank you very much. So again, we have another fairly similar case to our previous one. In this instance, the applicant wishes to utilize an existing structure there as an accessory use to the business on the property. It's currently zoned MXI, Mixed Industrial Commercial District, and is approximately 3.8 acres in size. Staff has reviewed the application materials, and we have no objection to this conditional use request.
Thank you. I now call upon the applicant to make his or her presentation on the request and any response to the zoning administrator's report.
My name is Joe Hutchison. I'm with BHC, 120 North Main, El Dorado. They're wanting to continue to use the house as a residence. Basically, I think it's a rental is the idea there, but
Do you have any questions for?
I have none. Seen this
Okay.
before.
Not adding any structures or anything, using what's existing.
yeah, just what's there. That's an existing house and they just want to be able to continue using it as a house.
And we did just review this one last week in subdivision as well.
You reviewed the plat, which is the next agenda item. This
Wow,
is
I'm
just to
sorry.
keep that house on it. You guys are
Okay.
talking about the plat in a few minutes.
Well, that's close. Are there any members of the public here to, would like to speak on the case? Nope. Have there been any written communications been received? Okay. Do you have any final comments, sir? Okay. Hearing no further public comments, I hereby close the public portion of the hearing. There will be no further public comments unless the board wishes to ask questions or clarify information. The board will now deliberate the request to determine whether the evidence presented supports the conclusions required in findings of fact, and the board will now consider the criteria provided for evaluation.
I can take this one.
Thank you.
Does the evidence support the conclusion that, 1, the proposed conditional use complies with all applicable regulations, including lot size requirements, bulk regulations, use limitations, and performance standards, unless a concurrent application is in process for a variance? Staff, yes.
Concur.
2, the proposed conditional use will not cause substantial injury to the value of other property in the neighborhood. Staff anticipates no such negative effects. Concur. 3, the location and size of the conditional use, the nature and intensity of the operation involved in or conducted in connection with it, and the location of the site with respect to streets giving access to it are such that the conditional use will not dominate the immediate neighborhood so as to prevent development and use of neighboring property in accordance with the applicable zoning district regulations. In determining whether the conditional use will so dominate the immediate neighborhood, consideration shall be given to A, the location, nature, size, and height of buildings, structures, walls, and fences on the site, and B, the nature and extent of landscaping and screening on the site. Staff says, No, this action would simply be allowing for the use of an existing dwelling as an accessory use to the applicant's business.
Concur.
Concur.
4, off-street parking and loading areas will be provided in accordance with the standards set forth in Article 5 of these regulations. Such areas will be screened from adjoining residential uses and located so as to protect such residential uses from injurious effects. Staff, yes. Concur.
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 5, adequate utility, drainage, and other such necessary facilities have been installed or will be provided by plating, dedications, and/or guarantees. Staff, yes, all are currently in place. Concur.
Concur.
6, adequate access roads, entrance and exit drives, and/or access control is available or will be provided by plating, dedications, and/or guarantees, and shall be so designed to prevent traffic hazards and to minimize traffic congestion in public streets and roads. Staff, yes. Concur.
Concur.
Is there, oh, go ahead.
I have a question. Conditional use, does this have any time frame associated with it, or is this for eternities?
They have 180 days to act on the conditional use, but then after that, it's perpetual.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
No, you're fine. Any other questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to either approve, modify and approve, disapprove, or to table the discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve. Having considered the evidence at the hearing and determined that the findings of fact have been found to exist that support all 5 conditions set out in subsection 11-107C of the zoning regulations, I, David Foley, move that the chairperson be authorized to sign a resolution granting conditional use for case number BZA-CU24-002 as requested.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
And Colson, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries.
I do have one question. It says 5 conditions and we read 6.
We should update that in the script for the future. Thank you.
Whoops.
I'm going to go ahead and make an motion to adjourn the Board of Zoning Appeals and reconvene the Planning Commission. Is there-
Second the motion.
Thank you. Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And we are now to 5.9, small tract plat, Train Enterprise Edition. Staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So yes, this would be, Mike cut out here for a second, sorry. This would be the property we were just discussing. In this case, it would be just the final small tract plat. This would be just creating a single lot, roughly about 3.8 acres in size. It would receive access from Southwest Meadowlark Road by way of a 60-foot opening, and to the north from Southwest Fairfax Street by way of one 40-foot opening. Additionally, there would be a designated 20-foot contingent temporary access on South Meadowlark Road. There will be no access control on US 54. It's currently zoned MXI, yeah, I think that about sums it up. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Excellent. Do we have questions for staff?
Why will it have a temporary driveway?
I can answer that, or we can make Joe earn his keep tonight.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind answering the question.
Yeah. So the temporary drive currently at the southeast corner of the property, kind of maybe south central part of the property, there's a pole barn that is currently being used. And basically the drive would go where eventually the frontage road would be. So just access across there to access that pole barn.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? If not, I'm going to make the recommend that the Planning Commission approve the Train Enterprises small tract final plat. And I made the motion. Do I have a second?
David Foley, second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And motion carries. Do we have any member items? No? All right, well, I will, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I, Gary Yusel, will make a motion to adjourn the Planning Commission and Board of Zoning Appeals.
Motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Third.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And we are done. I estimated 2 hours.
Me too.